if Manchester City go on to win it, as we expect them to do, I think it could be Liverpool that would be getting nearest to them. And I certainly wouldn't write them off in the Champions League. You don't get that bad overnight. They've got a lot of injuries, as we know. Circumstances have caught up with them, which nobody expected to, with the injuries that they've had. But they proved the other night against Leipzig they can still be good, and I expect them to get better and better, Nathan, as it goes along.
The way they lost their last two league matches against Manchester City and Leicester, in both games with 20 minutes to go, they're level with Manchester City, they're leading Leicester, and it sort of turns into a bit of a calamity in both of them with Alisson central to it. When it goes apart in such an extreme way, can you explain it? Can you look at Liverpool in the latter stages of those games and identify what's gone so horribly wrong for them?
Yeah, goalkeeper. Alisson Alisson is a brilliant goalkeeper, as we've seen. I don't remember him making a mistake all last season. And the things that he did in the Manchester City match were unbelievable. I mean, he laid two goals on a plate for Manchester City, and they took advantage of it. Then we go to Leicester, and the mistake that he made for the goal, when it was 1-1, I know there was lots of controversy about the free kick situation and that, but that only made it 1-1. You know, the teams can come back from that, like Liverpool. But once Alisson, they collapsed mainly because the goalkeeper collapsed. I mean, what he did for the second goal, Nathan, was just incredible. He must have run out for nearly 25 yards.
Yeah.
For a ball that the defender had, on his own virtually. Now, what he was doing, I don't know. What he was doing against Manchester City the previous week, that's 3 goals he was totally responsible for. I mean, he hasn't cost him a goal since he's come into the club. You don't expect anything like that to happen, and why he did it, I don't know. It's just unbelievable. But the other day now, he was full of concentration in the Leipzig match, full of concentration, as he should have been. It's something that you would never, ever think would happen to him. And again, that's football.
Yeah.
But, it's just impossible. I mean, he was saving them last year, point after point after point in different matches. He was absolutely unbelievable. And then he goes to two vital matches like that, and it's the cause of 3 goals, not 1 goal. And the defeats, Nathan. You have to put it down to him in the 2 matches you mentioned.
I think the worry for Liverpool supporters is that maybe they look at somebody like David De Gea, who 3-4 years ago was the best goalkeeper in the world, who made all those saves for Manchester United, who kept them in games, and then mistakes started to happen, and it's continued. That actually, maybe now Alisson, his head is gone, and that this player who was arguably the best goalkeeper in the world is now turning into a bit of a liability. It's only 2 games, but would you be concerned that when you have it goes so badly wrong that it's quite difficult for Alisson to get his confidence back up to where Liverpool needed to be?
Well, he was fine the other night, Nathan. Against Leipzig, no doubt about that. You could see his concentration was there. He's kicking. He just had a couple of bad games. I don't expect that to happen. Of course it can happen. It can happen to any goalkeeper, I mean, Spurs keeper was the best at one time, and he's not so good. And you say with the Manchester United keeper, made a mistake. It can happen, and the nerves can go. I would be very, very surprised if that happened to Alisson. Very surprised.
What about Thiago's performances for Liverpool? Because he came in the summer with a stellar reputation with all he'd achieved at Bayern Munich and at Barcelona before that, and he's had some serious injury problems. But over the last few weeks when he's come in, a lot of questions and that maybe his style of play doesn't suit this Liverpool team. No,
I wouldn't agree with that, Nathan. I mean, he's come in at a very, very bad time for Liverpool. They were playing at the worst with all the injuries they've had. I mean, you'd have to judge him in the team that played last year, if you're looking at the bright side of it. So he's come in at the worst time possible for any player, as a new player, to come into the club. And as you say, he's had a couple of injuries as well. I think he'll prove to be a big asset for them. I think he's a very good player. I'd say he's the most creative midfield player that they have. But in recent times, if the goalkeeper's doing what he's doing and the team is not doing what they normally do, then it's a really bad time for him to show what he can do. But I think he'll come good for Liverpool.
Yeah, so you're just waiting basically then till he has Henderson and Wijnaldum either side of him before making a full judgment.
Well, what happens a lot in football, Nathan, you know, you see a lad out for injuries, they have a bad run, and it's an old saying in football, he's become a great player without having played a match because he hasn't, and they say, well, it must be down to him because he's not playing, and sometimes that's not the case, and this is the case here, I think, because he's come in at this particular time when Liverpool are having a very, very bad spell, that it's very easy to point a finger at him and say, well, you know, it's his fault, he's not doing his stuff. But I think he'll prove to be a big player for Liverpool.
All right, we shall see. John, I want to take a quick break because I do want to talk about Spurs as well and their decline in form, but we'll do that right after these.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Champions League nights on Off the Ball. Bigger than Zlatan's Eco. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Minimal contact in stadiums shouldn't stop the usual suspects from going down. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
You're welcome back. John Giles is with us as always on this Thursday evening. John, I almost had to take a stop for a moment when I looked at the Premier League table and spotted that Spurs are 9th, just ahead of Arsenal, considering when they met in the North London derby before Christmas, and Spurs had that 2-0 win that was seen as a bit of a masterclass. They get early goals and they sit back, and that maybe in this strange season they had the depth of squad that they could go on for a bit of a title run. It's been an absolute collapse ever since then. What's gone wrong?
Nobody knows, Nathan, but they're certainly in trouble. I think Mourinho's in trouble. I think it's getting to a situation that it was at Manchester United. I think it's upset a lot of people, particularly Gareth Bale and Dele Alli. And a lot of it could go back to, you know, that documentary they did in the summer.
Yeah.
Like, they did things, I watched the documentary, and things happened in that, and watched it, that should never happen in a football club.
What sort of stuff?
Well, first of all, whatever happens in the dressing room stays in the dressing room. And there has to be a sense of trust between the managers and the players, in that you could have, and I was very lucky, I played in a Leeds United team for 12 years. We had a very good manager, good set of lads, and there was big rows, especially with Big Jack. Big Jack was involved in nearly all of them. Right, and Dom would have a go at me, or he'd have a go at Norman Hunt, he'd have a go at anybody, we'd have a go at each other. It never became public, Nathan. And that's the way it's supposed to be. What happens in the dressing room stays in that dressing room. And next thing, you have a documentary with Levy, the chairman, getting involved in it. You had, Mourinho getting on to Dele Alli at that particular time. And at the moment, looking at it last week, Nathan, when the match was finished with Manchester City, and they had a right hiding in that particular game. Manchester City were very good. And next thing I saw him going out on the pitch, and I don't know if you noticed, he's saying to, putting his arms around a few of the players. They didn't want to know.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they didn't want to know. And then after the match, he said, I can't say anything about the players. They were great. They did this, they did that, they did the other. In other words, I'm trying to get back with the players. That's the way I read it with him, because they weren't good. I don't think they were having, at the end, I don't think they were having a go for him. And I think he was trying to make the most of it. That's the way I would read it. I think, I think when Mourinho, at some stage in his career at any different clubs, whether it be Manchester United, somewhere along the line, if they're not having good results, he falls out with the players, Nathan. And he doesn't really take the responsibility himself. And what I see at the moment is that situation. And I think it's trouble.
Is Mourinho as a manager maybe just not suited to the way modern clubs are run, when you often go on about the importance of the manager being able to select their players? I think you mentioned before that it very much felt like Gareth Bale was a Daniel Levy buy.
Yes.
That he brought him back, maybe not for purely footballing reasons. Matt Doherty, again, even at the time, you looked at the way he played with Wolves and you wondered where he was going to fit into Mourinho's system. And from very early in the season, you could see Mourinho wasn't happy with him as a right back. That Mourinho doesn't have the control of the players he's brought in, and that maybe he wasn't able to go into that dressing room and improve any of the players that were already there.
Yeah, he falls out with them, Nathan. You know, like I would suspect too that he wouldn't be in charge of the incoming players, as you mentioned there, which he at the Chelsea and when he was at his best, he did have that power to do it. But if you look at the Dele Alli situation, for example, there's no doubt that he wants them to go to Paris Saint-Germain on loan, and Levi stopped it. Now that's dangerous stuff. You know, I mean, that's going against what the manager wants on the playing side, and that's big trouble. And and when he blows up in a big way. You know, if you go back to Chelsea, Manchester United, any of the teams he's with, like, he has to be in control, which is right to do. And if he loses control of the players, and particularly with the Levi situation, it's looking like it's getting to that stage.
Yeah.
Nathan.
The problem is clearly Mourinho, though, because like this has happened now at a succession of clubs.
Oh yeah, well, don't forget he's been hugely successful as well. I mean, hugely successful. So it depends what happens. I think when he goes into Manchester United, if he gets off to a good start, everything is okay, right? If they lose a couple of matches early on, like he did with Luke Shaw, or was it Luke Shaw? Was that his name? That left back.
Yeah.
You know, publicly humiliating them. Right? And that's what he does. If it's not going his way, then it's not his fault. So he has to start blaming somebody. And once he starts blaming, particularly the players, then he's going to lose them.
Yeah.
And I think it's got to that stage, or it looks very near to be at that stage at Spurs at the moment. And if you're losing matches like they are losing, then players lose confidence. The players themselves lose confidence in the manager.
It also doesn't look like it's a very enjoyable style of football to play within. Now, maybe when you're winning games, everything is enjoyable. But for a team that's a lot of attacking, creative players, to be told by and large, it seems just to get men behind the ball and to try and hold out, particularly if they have a lead, that eventually footballers are going to get a bit bored with that. Yeah,
well, that's what he's always done, Nathan. He hasn't changed. I mean, Mourinho hasn't changed. It's just that if you look at it, he mightn't have the players that he had at Chelsea who did what he wanted to do with John Terry and Lampard. They had some great players, you know. And I don't think he's changed. He hasn't changed his way of managing. I mean, at Chelsea, when he first went to Chelsea, he got off to a good start his first time at Chelsea. So he didn't have to get on to the players.
Yeah.
It was just, okay, lads, go out, same again. It's when he loses a couple of matches, like he didn't get a good start at Manchester United, then he picks on them, you know, and then he falls out with them, like he did with a few of the players at Manchester United, especially Pogba.
Yeah.
You know, the Pogba situation, and my take on it is, I don't think he would have bought Pogba. I think Pogba was bought by the man in charge of the transfers, who wasn't doing it exceptionally well. But when he came back after the World Cup, I mean, Mourinho actually said he's a world-class player.
Yeah.
I think that was to go along with the buying of Pogba. I don't think Pogba was ever his type of player, right? And I think he thought, well, I can handle it. I need the Manchester United job. And then it got to a stage where Pogba was playing so poorly, he turned on him. And that got worse and worse, Nathan, and a few other players, because it was going to. And I think that's the way Mourinho is. He falls out with players. If he does, you know, it's never his fault. And I think he's falling out with a few of the Spurs players at the moment, which leads to big trouble. And I don't think he has a good relationship with Levy anyway.
It is all leading once again to speculation around Harry Kane's future, and Harry Kane is going to be 28 in the summer. He is still waiting to win a trophy with Tottenham. If you're in Kane's position and look at what he's achieved already as a Spurs player without the trophies, the type of guy they'll probably end up building a statue outside the stadium if he stays. But is that enough? Or do you think to fulfil his own ambitions he's got to go to, well, he can probably go wherever he wants? Yeah,
it's very difficult to know, because you don't know Kane, I don't know Kane. I mean, it could be Spurs through and through, Nathan. You know, he's earning quite a lot of money. He probably got money going somewhere else. But you don't know what's going through lads. I mean, some of the lads, if he grew up supporting Spurs, which I think he did, all his life he wanted to play for Spurs. He is playing for Spurs. He's very successful for Spurs. Does he want to move? Does he want to win more trophies? We don't know. But I think I saw in the paper this morning, 150 million is mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Now, will Levy get that much for him? I mean, to be honest now, if I was Manchester City at the moment, or probably Manchester United, but certainly Manchester City, I would pay the 150 million for him.
Right.
Because I think he'll get the money back with him in the team that they have.
Yeah.
I think he'd be sensational with them, the way they play. That'd be my take on as a player. Now, whether he would want to do that, I think if Levy got the 150 million, I think he'd sell him.
Yeah.
I think Spurs need money at the moment. So I think he would sell him. As his ambitions to win trophies, I don't know. But some lads are in clubs, Nathan. There are very few of them in Bale's position where he Spurs through, and we don't know. He's never said anything. You must say, he's always done his stuff for Spurs. He hasn't stopped doing that because he wants to get away, and he's done the job for them in a big way. But if he wants trophies, he's going to have to move.
Yeah. Manchester City, considering they're 10 points clear, are being linked with a lot of attacking players come the summer, and obviously Lionel Messi is one of them, and maybe what happens with Barcelona in the Champions League is going to ensure that he certainly goes this summer. Difficult question, and totally different players at different stages of your career. If you're the Manchester City manager, right now, this coming summer, do you want Lionel Messi or do you want Harry Kane?
Harry Kane. In my opinion, Harry Kane.
Right.
You have to. He's at the peak of his career. Now, Messi has been probably, I think, the best player in the world. But he is 33, 34 at this stage. So you'd have to look to the future, and I think I think there's no doubt that Kane would be playing longer than Messi.
Yeah.
I would. That'd be my personal opinion. That if we're spending that type of money, and there'd be you'd have to spend a lot of money on Messi. Don't forget. Well, he might get a free transfer, but the wages would be severe. Now, it would be a temptation to go for him, but if you're asking me my opinion, I'd go for Kane.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of time for talking about what happens in the transfer window, but just going back to Liverpool then, because if they're looking to, and already I'm sure thinking about getting back close to Manchester City next season, if you're looking at their front three who've been together for a long time, and you might have seen Jamie Carragher's analysis of how many minutes they've all played over the last 4 or 5 seasons together at Liverpool, is that an area next summer you think if Liverpool want to get back contending that they need to look at?
Well, it could be. I mean, they bought Jota. Jota?
Yeah.
Has been a success. It could well be. I mean, these lads, I think it's Liverpool. I mean, Firmino hasn't played well at all. But, I mean, Salah's still scoring the goals. Mane still scores. I mean, there's a few years left in them, Nathan, if they want to stay there.
Yeah.
I think there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, and I think they're at the peak of their careers.
You don't think that because they've all played together for so long that teams have figured it out, that the natural cycle of a club that's contending is that you need a turnover of players, you need something new?
Well, you could, yeah. Well, Liverpool in the past have always done that when they had Dalglish and they bought players in, but they didn't let the great players go either. I mean, they kept Dalglish for a long time, Rush for a long time. So I don't think Mane and Salah will ever lose the ability to do what they're doing as long as they have the will to do it. Yeah. And I think they're pros. So I don't think anybody's going to figure them out. No matter how good the opposition is. I mean, if you look at Messi and Ronaldo over the years, I mean, we all know how they play. Who's figured them out? That's what makes great players. They just don't be figured out. And I think Salah and Mane are those type of players. As long as they have the players around them, Nathan, which I think Liverpool will have the players around them. Yeah. To do it. I wouldn't think they'd have to go now, unless they've been tapped up themselves and their agents have. This is the big problem for people in the position. that Liverpool are in. I mean, if somebody gets a hold of Salah, when his agent comes to him and says, look, Barcelona, I can get it moved to Barcelona for X amount. All you have to do now is get away. This is what happens in the game today. There's no doubt about it. But if they're prepared to stay at Liverpool and are happy at Liverpool, I think they're there for they're doing the stuff for the next few years.
All right, John, great stuff as always.
Okay, Nathan.
We'll talk to you next Thursday. John Giles there with us every Thursday. If you missed any of that, you can subscribe to the podcast on the OTB Sports app. Remember, 2 live games as always this Sunday on Off the Ball. Myself and Brian Kerr will bring you through Aston Villa and Leicester from 2 o'clock. And then it's Arsenal against Manchester City from 4:30 with Stephen Doyle and Vinnie Barth.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Ready for your next big move? The trip from the fridge to the couch. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.